Well, I have Andrea Bishop here with me from the Electric Quilt Company, and she's going to be showing us how to use software to plan our quilts. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to have you here because many times I get frustrated to start a pieced quilt because I'm not very good with math, and I need a little help with that. So you're going to show us how to use this
software,
a program.
Right. There's so many options when it comes to software. I've loaded one on my computer, and I'm going to show you basically how software can help you in the design process, because it's great because it takes the math out and you really see what you're going to get before you even cut a piece of fabric, which is a real advantage. So let's start out with some quilts and figuring out where we are.
So what's the first thing that you do?
Well, you open whatever software you have, and you'll either be working on a quilt or working on a block, and you can just switch between the two like that. You pick what type of quilt layout you want, whether it's a horizontal straight set like the one on the screen, or on point where all your blocks are tilted 45 degrees. You can do tumbling blocks if you want your blocks skewed. You can do strip quilts where all of these are set in rows, like if you wanted to do panels.
And could you do variations of that?
Totally. There's even charm quilts if you wanted to play with color, and there are even layouts where all your blocks can have different sizes, which makes it a real punch when it comes to designing. But let's start basic.
Okay.
There are speed keys for learning how to set things quickly.
Now, what's this menu that's here on the right? Are those fabrics?
These are actually scanned fabrics that you can color with. So you can use whatever ones are on your computer. You can use ones you scan or take pictures of yourself.
Okay.
Like if you want to click in this bird fabric here, you could alt-click the other squares.
Now, what if I had my own hand-dyed fabric that I wanted to use in a quilt?
You would just go to the fabric library and import your scans, whatever way you want.
So just scan the fabric right into the computer?
Exactly, and you can get all sorts of different fabric scans in and just add them to color with later.
So I could combine my own hand-dyes with some of the commercial fabrics?
Exactly.
Fun.
So setting fabrics is just like setting blocks. You can use any number of piece patterns because piece blocks, they can still be art quilts.
Oh, absolutely.
It just depends on how you color everything. So you just add different blocks to your project depending on what you want to do. Maybe we want to make...
So you could take a very simple floor patch, and depending upon how you played with it in the software program, make it have it be very contemporary.
Yeah.
And complex.
Well, let's change this layout here, and let's increase the number of blocks to be 8 and 10, and maybe makes the blocks a little smaller. If we go in and maybe set this here alternately, and we could click in some of these here, this would be a variation of the quilt that we actually have in front of us.
And you just said that you could take some of the blocks and make them smaller or larger, which is actually the quilt that we have on the table. The blocks are larger on the top, and there's more piecing on the bottom.
Right. This it kind of gives the feeling of weight as you go further down. So here we can just make, maybe start with red and go into an orangey color and then into yellow. So it's all about how you color the quilt.
So once you have your quilt design that you're satisfied with, what about borders?
When you're doing borders, you just go to the Borders tab, and you didn't lose your quilt. It's just the tab
Another
here.
window?
Yes, so that you're focusing on the width of the borders. There's all sorts of different styles that can have blocks set in them themselves.
So you can actually skew them.
Yes, and so here in this inside quilt center there's 10. So I could make it match and have 10 here, and across the top there are 8 in my original center. So I could make the blocks actually match the quilt. And there are half drop styles, so now the seams match. So it makes it fun to design and have them all work out well together. So you could continue this theme all around there, and eventually, you know, depending on your block style, you could end up with a quilt like this.
Oh, that is beautiful, and that's the one we have on the table. Now tell me a little bit about piecing.
If you wanted to draw your own blocks, you would just switch what you're working on, and it's possible to draw pieced and applique blocks. Let's say you wanted to draw on a compass grid or a New York Beauty grid or some sort of 8-pointed star. You could even draw your own kaleidoscopes.
Oh, see, that's something I'd be interested in.
So you just click, click, and double click to close. Click, 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 and double click to close. And you can clone patches and move them, so don't feel like you have to draw each one individually.
And it actually does a straight line. I don't have to be very careful with the cursor of getting...
A lot of times with software programs there are snaps, and the snaps work like magnets, and they suck the line into the little dot so that it's pretty, you know, foolproof.
Pretty exact.
Yes, when you're drawing straight lines. You can draw other things. And I like doing kaleidoscopes like this. I start with a grid of 2, and then I draw circles.
Now let's say you are playing with the kaleidoscope quilt and you want to try one design and then you want to move on and try another to see which one you like best. Can you save those windows, keep those windows open?
You can save multiple versions of the same quilt over and over and over.
Okay.
Let's say you wanted to do a snowflake kaleidoscope. You could just start a new on-point quilt and grab your kaleidoscopes and maybe click them in here. And here's your other snowflakes.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And play with color.
Now, so these are all for pieced quilts. But what if I wanted to make an applique, a quilt with applique?
Then you would just switch what you're working on, and you could draw your own motifs. Let's say you wanted to draw a folk art design.
Okay.
I would draw my heart.
How did you get to that heart?
I'm working on a block, and there are all these little stamp kind of tools here to draw with. And you have petals. So if I start a new one, I can, let's see, I can rotate this around to make a wreath, and I'll just spin it and make it really close.
Oh, that's beautiful.
You can design your own quilting designs and stitch them out later. The possibilities are truly endless. I like doing rectangular blocks sometimes and making these vines. You can...
Oh, so now it's really loose. Oh, wow, look at that.
So if you wanted to put a whole bunch of flowers on a vine, you would have control over how wide or how narrow that vine is.
Now, what is that middle line for?
The middle line is how you control the spine of the shape. So you don't have to draw 2 lines and keep them exact the whole time. It'll just let you draw and have both lines change at the same time. And it's really, really helpful for contemporary designs and squigglies, like if you wanted to do a quilt with a bunch of spirals.
Now that you've designed this, what do you do with it, and how do you print all this information that you've been playing with in the computer? Your color choices, your seam allowance, everything.
Well, for this design here, you would just print templates because it is an applique design. If you wanted it to be 2 inches, you could do that and just preview it. And it would give you your little applique design there. If you wanted it to be larger, let's say you wanted it to be 12 inches, this is the beauty of software. It will increase the size for you.
So I can just print this on my home printer on 8.5 by 11, and it will be on multiple sheets.
And I've done this before a lot. I just walk over to my sliding glass door and I tape the sheets to each other and match up all these lines, and it gives you the perfect pattern for like a 48-inch block. It's really helpful.
And how do you print a quilt?
You would just switch what you're working on and print the quilt, and this will give you the outline for how to set your blocks together once you've sewn them from the other patterns.
And it'll give me my seam allowances for each piece and my color choices and everything.
Totally, yes.
Wow, so that's gorgeous. And this is so fun, and it makes it so easy and takes the math out of everything.
You can design quilts in a day and have them sewn the next.
Well, I'm excited to get going on a kaleidoscope quilt.
Ooh.